Hello, we are live now. Apologies for the slight second delay. Uh, this is Right Honorable Limbo here, and today, welcome to the stream. Paperball or not? Uh, who will be the next Pope? And before I begin, let us start us off with a tune. This is the anthem of the Papal States. The Papal States was the nation. It was sort of the enclave of the Vatican at the time of when the treaty until the treaty signed with Italy with Benito Mussolini and Pius the 11th. Now let us listen to it. Such a humbling anthem, and if you didn't hear what I said, and I didn't explain the Papal States properly, the Papal States was the series of territories in the Italian peninsula under the direct sovereign of His Holiness from 756 until 1870. The breakdown of the Papal States was due to the fact of the Italian monarchy and the unification of Italy. And there was this whole, if you like Italian history, there was this whole sort of spiritual war within Italy, that the Pope against the Italian king, and the Pope would excommunicate any general who would fight against uh, the Papal States, and uh, they they somewhat got the loophole of the generals, and the generals they put Jewish generals to fight the Vatican Papal Guards. So that's a fun extra knowledge point. Uh, Now let us begin the stream. People, who will be the next pope? The premise of this stream was that in recent news we've heard the declining health of His Holiness Pope Francis, and the recent allegations and sort of rumors bumbling of resignation. Now, there was a good headline which I was reading on about. I think it was yesterday. It was that the Pope isn't a football star. Naturally, the Pope shouldn't retire. However, we've been hearing all sorts of nonsense that the Pope will resign. I mean, such as the article from AP News, which was big yesterday, and other news sources within America and the West. However, contrary to this, the American magazine said Pope Francis reassures the Brazilian bishops that he has no intentions of resigning. So I think that's one kicker to this. Uh, I'm I'm to the strong belief that Pope Francis will not resign because he wants a strong legacy, of course, and he will die in office like with many other popes. And the reason why I say that he wants a strong legacy is that Pope Francis reminds me of Cardinal Montini, Paul VI. Now, the story of Paul VI was that he was failing in old health and he had health issues, and he did mass reform. Pope Francis is doing mass reform right now, and Paul VI did mass reform, especially with his moti proprio in gravescentem eatum. It was the so in English that just means in growing in age. So it established a rule that only cardinals who have not reached the age of 80 can participate in the conclave. The real kicker to this document was that the heads of Vatican departments, the curia members and the sort of the bishops of dioceses would submit their resignations from those offices voluntarily at age 75. And it would be noted that the Pope would determine whether or not to accept those resignations by case basis. Now, the New York Times reported that uh, observers thought Paul VI was hinting at his resignation as he was 75 at the time when he released that article. And in fact, he had written that letter in 2nd of May 1965 in anticipation of the inability to serve as Pope until death. He wrote to the Dean of the College of Cardinals that in case of infirmity which is believed to be incurable or is a long duration or which impedes us for sufficiently exercising the functions of our apostolic ministry, or in the case of another serious and prolonged impediment, he renounced his office both of Bishop of Rome as well as head of the same Holy Catholic Church. However, he ended the whole Second Vatican Council. He ended it, and he wanted that legacy as a reformer. And I am to the strong case that Pope Francis wants that legacy of the reformer, the bulwark against the old establishment, the old guard, of the Catholic Church. So, yeah, that I think that would be the case. Now, the title says Paperball. What is Paperball? Now, you might ask, why is there a picture of the Kremlin now? I'll get to that later. Uh, the Popable. So Papal comes from the word popable, or able to be pope. It's a sort of it's an official term, Italian term, first coined by Vaticanologists, and now many use it internationally and use it regularly. Uh, lots of even curia members, cardinals use it now in their day-to-day language to describe a Roman Catholic man in practice, always a cardinal, who is likely to be a candidate to be elected a pope. Now, what is a Vaticanologist? Because a Vaticanologist is the one who normally determines who is papable, because they have that sort of authority. A Vaticanologist is the field of journalism and research studying and reporting about how the Holy See and the Roman Catholic Church operate. The term Vaticanologist originally comes from Kremlinologist, which is first used to describe the media, academic commentary experts who follow the function of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in general, and the functions of selection, the leadership of the elite in particular. So it would look at sort of the the Soviet Union's like hierarchy, leadership. What would it do? Because clearly it's secretive. So you would have journalists looking into it. Now, okay. Candidates are normally cardinals. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, traditionally cardinals are pope. So selected a few. It's like a sort of select few. It's sort of like this secret club, if you want to put it like that. However, you don't need to be cardinal per se to be pope. I mean, like mentioned here with Canon 332 of the 1983 canon law, it simply states that one already a bishop, not necessarily a cardinal, who accepts legitimate papal election becomes pope immediately. One who is not yet a bishop, and the church has elected several non-bishops to the papacy, can accept election, but he must immediately be consecrated a bishop. By implication, that would seem to require that a papal person needs to be a man and be willing to be baptized, ordained deacon, priest, and a bishop, and have the use of reason in order to accept the election, and if necessary, holy orders. So, in theory, anyone could be. Um, in theory, a Catholic man, not married, baptized, could be pope. Now, a good example of this is the Papal Conclave of August 1978, the death of Pope Paul VI, and subsequent election of Cardinal Albino Luciani as John Paul I. In the book The Horn of the Unicorn by the Angelus Press, stated that Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, one of my favorite bishops, who's not a cardinal at all, received a small number of votes, variously reported as three or several by the papal conclave. Now, if a two-thirds majority, we would have had a Pope Lefebvre. However, the last man who was elected, not as a cardinal, was Pope Urban VI, who was an archbishop, who was elected on April the 8th, 1378, and the Western Schism began during his papacy. So this arises. This arises. What determines a papal candidate? Now, there's no definite answer, of course, because it's just a bunch of experts determining what is papal, who's papal. Yet, I see a magic through within papability, the experience within the curia. So that's sort of, if you're into British politics, the curia is like the British cabinet, Boris Johnson's cabinet, and that would be diplomacy with the secular world and the theological political factions, and age. Those are the three papal factors. Now, age is the curveball here because one can be old and seen as, oh, he's not gonna be a good pope because he's gonna be senile. However, one can look at a young pope and say he's gonna have a long papacy. We don't want a long papacy. That was the case with Cardinal Siri in 1958, who was the henchman of Pope Pius XII, and ultimately he didn't rise up to that occasion because the Curia in 50, the whole conclave thought in 1958 that it was going to be a 40-year papacy. On I think, however, if you look at the slide, there are two clerics who represent the two good factors, and a good diplomat would be Archbishop Vigano there, and a good cleric with Curia experience was Cardinal Ottaviani. He was the head of the Holy Office. There, there are many factors with this. However, those are the magic three. Uh, I think also with papability, you can look at, once again, I'm bringing up age, is that Jesuit Cardinal Carlo Marina Martini was thought papable until he retired at the age of 75. Carlo Maria Martini is a liberal as well. And normally, there's a trend factor that normally it's the younger liberal cardinals who are more papable. The older they get, the less attractive they get. But however, Carlo Marina Martini just just directly jumped up. Now, I think I mentioned this earlier with the old age, but if I was a cardinal, I would I would be tired of two elderly and infirm popes. I really would if I was a cardinal. So ultimately, I would probably choose a younger cardinal to be the pope. And also, not to jump into the main segment of the live stream, because that will come to near the end of who I believe will be the pope and what factors will determine it. I think with an aggressive Russia and rising geopolitical tensions around the corner in 2020, the statistics will favor a European cardinal and those with diplomatic experience more than ever. I think this can be the case with Cardinal Pacelli, also known as Pius XII. Now, Pius XII, he was an all-rounder to the factors I mentioned. He was young. He was in his 60s, his 50s, late 50s and early 60s. World War II was right on the corner in 1939. He was a diplomat. He was the one who organized the Concordat with Germany, like I've mentioned in my previous apologetics video, to say that Pope Pius XII was not Hitler's man. So but he did sign the Concordat with Germany at the time of 1932, I believe, and he would establish lots of other deals, especially with Franco Spain while at his papacy. He would also delegate some stuff with Austria, Belgium, and France. So he was a diplomatic man. He had the Curia experience as well. He was a strong theologian. So all round, he met all those requirements. And I think Pius XII, Cardinal Pacelli, was a good example of what a paperball cardinal could do. And of course, there are many other factors, but the magic free is the magic free. Now, before we get into the main segment of today's stream, we need to understand how popes are elected. And now, if you couldn't infer, because I'm assuming most of you aren't dumb, is that it is due to papal conclaves. And the history and the history of the papal conclave, we need to understand the evolution of the system. There are three important papal bulls going to be mentioned. However, let me mention the first papal bull, which is the important factor here, and it's the massive story of why we have a conclave. So prior to the papal election, originally the election of the pope was decided by the puppet electoral process. The Holy Roman Emperor often directly named a deceased pope's replacement, or the pontiffs named his own successor, or the pope would name a replacement as such. Such a nomination under canon law was not a valid election, and the legal electors would have to ratify the choice, though undoubtedly they would naturally be swayed by circumstances to give effect to the imperial preference. In the in 1050, Cardinal Hillenbrand, future Pope Gregory the 12th, the 7th, Pope Gregory the 7th, began to challenge the Holy Roman Emperor's rights. Predecessor of Nicholas II, Stephen the Ninth, had originally elected had been originally elected during a period of confusion following the death of Emperor Henry III, and 12 months later the death of Pope Victor II, who Henry III had installed as Pope. Stephen the Fourth's election had obtained the consent of the Empress Regent, Agnes of Pietroto, despite the omission of the traditional preliminaries and the waiting of the cardinals for the imperial nomination. Soon after this appointment as Pope in 1058, upon the death of Stephen the Fourth, Nicholas II called for the synod at Suturi, with the imperial endorsement provided by the presence of the imperial chancellor. The first task of the synod was to denounce and excommunicate the irregularly elected anti-pope Benedict X, who was a puppet of the powerful Count of Tusculum and presently in Rome. Accompanied by troops by the Duke of Lorraine, Nicholas made his way to Rome and Benedict fled. Nicholas was consecrated Pope on 24th of January 1059, with wide acceptance of the Roman people, keen to avoid future controversy in papal elections and to curb the outside influence exerted by non-ecclesiastical parties. In April 1059, he summoned the synod in Rome. In nomine Domini was the codification of the synod's resolutions. In the promulgation of in nomine Domini, the papal bull written by Nicholas II, and the canon of the of the Council of Rome was the building blocks of the conclave of what we see it as today. The contents of the bull curtailed the rights of the emperor in papal elections. Specifically following was brought into canon law was the implicit of the right of approbation of the Roman pontiff by the emperor was abolished. The right of the imperial confirmation of the pope was retained, but it became less powerful, being a mere personal privilege granted to the emperor by the Roman See and could be revoked at any time. So this is where we get big funny moment, Francisco Franco. So something's interesting about the imperial right was that the ius exclusive. So that's the just exclusive. So it was the papal veto through the crown cardinal. A Catholic monarch could veto the cardinal deemed objectable. So the most recent example of this exercise of this holy monarch right was to exclude Cardinal Rampolla in 1903, and he was rejected by the conclave even though he got a two-thirds majority. Although over a course of several ballots, Rampolla still had a majority and he was leading candidate until he lost the support from the conclave, and the conclave elected Cardinal Sarto, also known as Saint Pius X. The following year, Pius X forbade the Ius Exclusivae, I'm mispronouncing it, Ius Exclusivae in the Apostolic Constitution Commission Nobis in 20th January 1904. Since then, the cardinals in the conclave have enjoyed to take this oath We shall never in any way accept under any pretext from any civil power whatever the office of proposing a veto of exclusion, even under the form of a mere desire, and as or any other method whatever by which the lay powers of any grade or order may wish to interfere in the election of the pontiff. So in the conclave, they take an oath saying no civil secular power will influence the the, the conclave. However, the the most recent unsuccessful attempt for this right was when General Francisco Franco made an unsuccessful attempt to block the election of Cardinal Montini, Paul VI. He sent the College of Cardinals some advice through Cardinal Lorano, the native Spanish, who was then the prefect of the Congregation of Rites. It was carefully drafted to fall outside the forms of influence that Pius X prohibited. So Francisco Franco told the College of Cardinals at the conclave to, Montini's not going to help us. He's going to be a reformer. He's not going to help this sort of, well, a theocratic Catholic Spain, because the New York Times reported a report before the beginning of the conclave. General Francisco Franco had asked six Spanish cardinals to prevent Cardinal Montini's elevation, and emphatically denied. And it was emphatically denied. The Spanish press had criticized Montini last October after he publicly interceded with Franco for political prisoners. So Montini argued for political prisoners, the communists, the liberals, and all that. Franco could have saved us. Oh dear. Now, the other papal bulls was in 1274 when Gregory X promulgated Ubi Periculum. It established the papal conclave format as the method for selecting a pope. So it argued for confinement and isolation of the cardinals in conditions designed to speed them to reach a broad consensus. The regulations were formulated in response to the tactics used against the cardinals by the magistrates of Viterbo during the prolonged papal election of 1268 to 1271, which took almost 3 years to elect Gregory X. So he ordered ubi periculum. Now, in the following years, Gregory the 15th had his papal bull in 1621, Aeterni Patris Filius, which established the requirement of a two-thirds majority of cardinal electors to elect a pope. Furthermore, this reform decreased the powers of secular leaders of individual factions in the conclave, which angered many Catholic monarchs. I believe at the time also in France, the French monarch was absolutely furious. He told the Cardinal Leon to change it or else shut up and get out of his court. It was a letter of sorts, and but he refused to see any cardinals for like a solid 5 months until he had to, of course. Now, now there are five. So we've understood the history now. Now there are 5 steps of choosing a pope, and those 5 steps are: cardinal summoned, a secret conclave, voting rituals, reaching decision, and new pope announced. However, funnily enough, there's a precept to all of this. The precept is that the seat must be vacant. There must be a sede vacant. Now, it's a funny word, sede vacant, sede vacantist, call it what you like, call me a rad trad, but in order to choose a pope first, there needs to be a sede vacant. There needs to be the death of His Holiness, or there needs to be the valid retirement of the pope for the Bishop of Rome to make the seat vacant. So, firstly, cardinals need to be summoned to Rome. So, the obviously the popes are chosen by the College of Cardinals. The church's most senior officials who are appointed by the pope are usually ordained bishops. They are summoned to a meeting at the Vatican, which is followed by the papal elections or the conclave. The dean of the College of Cardinals would be responsible for convoking the conclave. The dean of the College of Cardinals has the responsibility of communicating the news of the Pope's death to the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See and to the heads of the respective nations. He is the public face of the Holy See until a new Pope is elected. The College of Cardinals will govern the church, headed by the Cardinal Carmelengo, also known as the Chamberlain. Traditionally, the role is the overseer of the property and revenues of the Holy See, and it's the sort of the prime minister of the Holy See. The Carmelengo is responsible for the government of the Catholic Church when the papacy is vacant. That task was placed in the hands of the College of Cardinals of University Dominici Gregis, the motu proprio by John Paul II in 1996. His power is, however, extremely limited, being merely enough to allow church institutions to continue to operate and perform basic functions without making any definitive decisions or appointments that are normally reserved to other powers delegated by the Pope. Unlike the rest of the Roman Curia, however, the Camerlengo retains his office during a sede vacant period and functions of the executive director of the Vatican's operations, answerable to the College of Cardinals. This is primarily to carry out the college's decisions with regards to the funeral of the late Pope and the events leading up to the conclave. During this position, during this period, all the cardinals, retirees included, will begin to discuss in strict secrecy the merits of the likely candidate, popular to contrary belief. So, if we had a current set of account situations, so a situation of deceased Francis or unlikely retirement of Francis, the cardinal on the left, being Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, would convoke the conclave, as he is the College of Deans of Cardinals, and the cardinal on the right, Cardinal Kevin Farrell, would head the church with minimalistic authority, as he is the Carmelengo. Now, the second bit to this is the secret conclave. The cardinals are then shut away in the Vatican until they reach up agreement on the Pope. The meaning of the word conclave means just literally locked up with a key. So it's meant to be in secrecy. Once the conclave has begun, the cardinals eat, vote, and sleep within closed off areas within the Vatican until a new pope has been elected. They are allowed no contact with the outside world, barring medical emergency. All radios, television sets are removed, no newspapers or magazines are allowed in, and mobile phones are banned. Two doctors are allowed into the conclave, as well as priests who are able to hear confessions in various languages and housekeeping staff. All these staff swear an oath to promising to observe perpetual secrecy and undertake not to use sound or video recording equipment. I also I was reading upon this story as well that uh, the papal guards are trained to debug radios. They're trained to check for if there's any like secret recording devices as well. So they have that power to do so. Now, I think one thing that really annoys me. I'm gonna have a rant here now. One thing about secret conclave is that uh, many people call traditionalists rigid and all that nonsense. Yet the liberal faction of the church seems to know what they're doing, and they unify much quicker in conclaves. And and take this with no bias. There's this organization called the Saint Gallen Group. I've got the two is yes the vote. Uh see, okay, wait, never mind. So yes, we can get onto that. So uh, on the St. Gallen's group. So the St. Gallen group is an all-European cardinals group who meet annually in St. Gallen, Switzerland, to discuss reforms with respect to the appointment of bishops, collegiality, bishops' conferences, the primacy of the papacy, and sexual morality. They differ among themselves, but they share the view that Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, so Pope Benedict XVI, was not the candidate they wanted to be elected into the next conclave. So they plotted, they knew what they were doing. They had a sort of a strong anti Benedict camp. And, Benedict's the conservative out of the group. I mean, it's not really a high order to be a conservative, but he he was the main candidate. He was the strongest one. He is the papal one, and they wanted to. I believe they wanted to elect Cardinal Bergoglio. They wanted to elect the current Pope Francis. However, Pope Francis begged the St. Gallen's group not to elect him, So they let it slide, and Benedict became the Pope. And a bit like the St. Gallen's group, it's it's infamous like the Volante faction. It was the liberal cardinals in the 17th century who didn't want the sort of old guard cardinals. I mean, it's it's liberalism and it was Enlightenment ideas. Now, the voting rituals here, the third bit. So, so voting is held in the Sistine Chapel, where everything is conducive to an awareness of the presence of God, in whose sight each person will one day be judged. On the day of the conclave begins, the cardinals celebrate Mass in the morning before walking in procession to the chapel. Once the cardinals are inside the conclave area, they have to answer an oath of secrecy. Then the Latin command extra omnes, so everyone out, instructs all those not involved in the election to leave before the doors are closed. The cardinals have the option of holding a single ballot on the afternoon of the first day. From the second day, two ballots are held in the morning and two in the afternoon. Then the ballot paper is sort of the ballot paper is rectangular. It's printed on the upper half of the word Eligio un summunum pontificum, so I elect the supreme pontiff. Below is the space for the name of the person chosen. The cardinals are instructed to write in the name in a way that does not identify them and fold the paper twice. After all the votes have been casted, the papers are mixed, counted, and opened. All the papers are counted. One of the scrutineers calls out names of those cardinals who have been elected with a vote, received a vote. He pierces each paper with a needle through the word elegio, so placing all the ballots on a single thread. The ballot papers are then burned, giving off the smoke visible to uh, onlookers outside, which traditionally uh, burn. So traditionally, it turns black to white once a new pope has been chosen. Damp straws was once added to the stove to turn the smoke black, but over the years, there's been confusion with the color of smoke, which I'll mention later after this slide. Most recently, dye has been used for this sort of smoke. Now, now reaching a decision, burnt smoke. The only clue about what's going inside within Sistine Chapel is the smoke that emerges twice a day during the burning of the ballot papers. Black signals failure. The traditional white smoke means a new pope has been elected. Now, before I bring up this niche information, let me state I will present the following information not as so as to assert them as indisputable fact, but to inform them as it relates to the idea of burnt smoke. The Siri thesis asserts that conservative Cardinal Giuseppe Siri, then the Archbishop Cardinal Genoa, was elected Pope in the 1958 conclave, taking name Pope Gregory XVII, but that his election was suppressed by Freemasons and Communists. Siri did not associate himself with the idea of the Siri thesis, and he's been donned the nickname Pope in Red, reference to the cardinal color. So why do I mention this? Because the supporters of this theory, of this thesis, is that white smoke was seen on the 26th of October 1958, and that did indeed mean a pope had been elected, and that pope was Syrian, but he was forced to surrender the papacy in face of dire threats, being communist Freemasons and all that nonsense. While indeed it did turn white, that is a fact. The fact that Siri denied it the first time due to health reasons and denied it throughout his career as a cardinal, and he did never once say he was part of the thesis. Furthermore, he if if he was truly the Pope, he would have not worked for this anti-Pope. I mean, he worked for the Italian Episcopal Conference. He was the president of that, which John the 23rd made him in 1959. And he remained under the Pope under Paul VI until 1964. And he sat on the board presidency of the Second Vatican Council from 1963 until its close in 1965. I duly believe that the Siri thesis is just cope for some traditionalists. It really is. It really is cope. Now, after all that, a new pope is announced. Once one candidate has attained the required two-thirds majority, he is then asked, do you accept the canonical election as supreme pontiff? Having given his consent, the new pope is asked, by what name do you wish to be called? After he has chosen a name, the cardinals then approach the new pope to make an act of homage and obedience. The new pope also has to be fitted into new robes. The papal tailor will have prepared garments to dress a pope of any size, small, medium, or large. I believe also they have a cardinal wait list as well. So not to fat shame any cardinals, but they have to do last minute adjustments if required. So they've got that list of how fat a cardinal is in essence. So then, from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, the traditional announcement will echo around the square: Nuncio vobis gaudium manum. So habemus papam. So I announce to you a great joy: we have elected a pope. His name is then revealed, and the newly elected pontiff will make his first public appearance. After saying a few words, the Pope will give the traditional blessing of Urbi et Orbi, to the city of the world, and a new pontificate will begin. Now the process is all over. You get a new Pope. I mean, it's that's the whole system really. Uh, let me see. I haven't been reading the comments, so I could possibly answer some questions if you do have any questions by now. I will be the next segment now will be on the current predictions, which you've all been waiting for. So it, we're there, we're there. Uh, uh, sure, yes. uh, have you begun your limbo? I'm not running for the papacy, unfortunately. Uh, yeah, okay. That's all the questions I'll be reading. Okay, so now we get into the main bit. Main bit for tonight: who will be elected pope? Now, there's now the next pope. It's it's not simple like that. You just can't. It's not black and white really. I think touched upon earlier. A factor within electing a pope is factions, like the Saint Gallen faction. And I think one thing to note with this live stream is that this is time sensitive. Depending on when the Holy Father dies or abdicates, an undetermined amount of time may pass, which would naturally eliminate some candidates and makes others more papable if an extremely long papacy is not necessarily desirable. With the Holy Father, if the Holy Father was in good health, a conclave in 10 years would eliminate 92 of the current cardinals from voting. So that would be 74%. So I would say this would be a hypothetical for this year, a year, or 2 years. This won't be a hypothetical for the whole of his pontificate, Pope Francis. So let's get on with these statistics. Does the church have any insurances against these political gangs to get their own pontiff? Yes, they do. So they have uh, in the Moti Proprio by John Paul II in Dominic Gregis, uh, the 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 Pope set out that anyone conspiring within the conclave, inside the conclave, they would receive automatic Latin Essentia excommunication. However, these groups, like the St. Gallen's group, they conspire before the election and they can speak privately because they have their own little faction. They got their own quarters. However, they, I think, I think the St. Gallen's group, as it was all European, they had their own European quarter. Thus, it would be much easier for them to congregate and discuss among themselves than there would be Bergoglio in the South American quarter having to go all the way to the European quarter and say, "Hey, don't elect me as Pope in 2005." So to answer that, George, yes. Oh, you're finally awake. Well done. Always staying up for a right honorable Limbo live stream. That's great. Okay, so the stats here. So there currently, currently 208 cardinals, 116 of whom are cardinal electors. So those are cardinals who are under 80. This is not including Pope Francis' recently created 13 cardinals, including 9 cardinal electors. So In total, there should be 221 cardinals, 125 cardinal electors, and a two-thirds majority is 84 cardinals. I think what's somewhat damning for traditionalists is that 60% of the cardinals elected are by Pope Francis. As such, a strong, I think I'm going to mention it later on, but a papal factor will be a successor in the key image of Pope Francis. On the next two slides, however, the cardinals which I determined to be strong papal wise and who would live up to the expectations of the modern world are moderately conservative or conservative, but expect a shock when looking at 60% by Pope Francis. And if you want to look at how the modern world is accelerating as well, the next pope can be liberally concerned or orthodox within his theology or hold whatever position, but the cardinals will be looking at the main priorities of stability and stability within the church, how it can grow its members, and they'll look at social issues like what Pope Francis is looking at, like poverty, charity, and they'll be looking at debates on same-sex unions, which have been put up to board due to Pope Francis's contradictory statements. So it may be for the better or maybe for the worse. And a cool statistic here is that from what I've understood from some sort of like news sites and Vaticanologists, said that 55% of the cardinals are quote unquote conservative, 15% of the cardinals are moderate, and 30% of the cardinals are liberal. Take it as you will. I do think that uh, we will possibly get a conservative pope. I do hope. I'll pray for that, of course. But there's a. I think in my conclusion, there's a good point I'll mention, which will surely keep most of you happy, you traditionalists. So there are five considerations within electing the new pope. So firstly, the Italian mafia bloc. Second, publicity. Third, age. Fourth, anti-Yank, so anti-American. And fifth being Pope Francis's continuity. Now, this is all my opinion, okay, and my intellect. However, the main points and the objectives when looking at the new pope will be these fives, and we need to take into consideration when looking at this papability is the mention of the all-rounded diplomacy, experience, and age. Now, firstly, on the Italian mafia bloc, nationality for a pope is no longer sort of a pivotal uh, idea within electing a pope. I mean, for the past 50 years, I mean, we've had two foreign popes who aren't Italian. The days of a non-Italian phobia are gone. However, Italians make up the largest voting bloc within the College of Cardinals. In order for someone to be papal, they must need the support of the cardinals, the Italian cardinals. There are 44 cardinals and there are 19 cardinal electors. 19 is the most. I mean, the second largest is about two or three. 19. The Italians can sweep it if they can. Second, the the publicity. Uh, in reaction to the somewhat uh, sort of unpredictability of the papacy of Pope Francis, it can be reasonably speculated that due to the relatively unknown nature of Pope Francis before his election, the cardinals may have an interest in picking a proven and predictable cardinal, someone who is well known, because we don't want a situation again where you have a pope which contradicts statement after statement, contradicts his points as a cardinal. I mean, and who would contradict dogma, of course, that would be the dangerous idea for the Cardinals. So they would want to choose someone who's already well known to the media and who's just well known in general. Thirdly, is age. I mentioned this earlier. Cardinals will be prudent in considering the age of their choice. They may be inclined to choose an older member of the college to avoid an unprecedentedly long papacy. Choosing a man as a pope, I mentioned this earlier, a pope in his 60s could result in to something up to 30-year papacy, barring abdication. Fourth is uh, anti-Yank, anti-American. Now, Sorry, Cardinal Leo Raymond Burke supporters. I mean, I know I've got a few Burke supporters here, but an American will not be elected to the papacy so as long as America continues to remain a sole geopolitical superpower. The Vatican and the cardinals do not want to send wrong signals to the Russians or the Chinese. They don't want to be like the church is anti-Eastern. They're pro-American because we've got American cardinal. Don't want that situation. Thus, I believe Cardinal Leo Burke has no chance at all to be pope. And is the fifth one is Pope Francis's continuity. Mods, go ahead and ban Yanks for the chat. I don't like that. I love you, George. Five. In according with the model set up by Pope Francis, a cardinal of a more pastoral nature may be considered to show continuity within the papacies, although this may not be necessarily a necessary condition. But if we have a pastoral experience and the same administrative experiences, this could be well appreciated through the Vatican hierarchy and the establishments in the Vatican already. So, someone who believes more in compassion and not the same doctrine necessarily, but the same flair and nature as Pope Francis, that would be more acceptable to the College of Cardinals. So, the top five candidates for the papacy are Cardinal Turkson, Cardinal Uliet, Cardinal Parolin, and Cardinal Tegel. Now, this isn't like I've listed this in the likelihood. So, Cardinal Turkson would be number one, Cardinal Uliet would be number two, Cardinal Parolin would be number three, and Cardinal Tegel would be number four. So, let's begin. Who is Cardinal Turkson? Peter Kondewo Appiah Turkson, Cardinal Turkson, is from Ghana. He's from Africa. And he was born on the 11th of October 1948. He is currently 72. I think what makes Cardinal Turkson a great papal character is his experience. If I can read his experience here, he was the former president of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, prefect of the promotion of integral human development, so he's got former diplomatic experiences like being a papal nuncio. He's got pastoral experiences, and he's quite well known to the media. And he was part of the last two conclaves. Peter Turkson. He's had a long experience within the establishment within the Vatican, and he has been seen papable for his last three pontificates. Cardinal Turkson, for the most part in the modern world, will be a stepping stone for Catholics in Africa. There will be a good rupture within Africa where sort of the Pentecostal Protestant Africans will become Catholic. They will. And the Catholic Church is seeing this as a good opportunity. However, I think one massive problem to Cardinal Turkson is that would him being African, would that be the problem here necessarily? Now, we know Catholic doctrine, of course. Catholics, we're all Catholics, we're all the we're all that we're all under the same church. Yet, is the College of Cardinals ready to accept a non-European, non-white pope? And would that affect the European standards of the Catholic Church? And I think that could be a massive barring factor with a Cardinal Turkson. And it's not necessarily to say the Cardinals are racist. I mean, sure, I mean, nothing, I'm not saying they are, but the fact is, the Catholic Church for a strong time has been predominantly European. Yes, sure, we've had Arabian popes, we've had Israeli, Palestinian, Syrian popes, but the matter of the fact is that it would be unorthodox to have an African pope. However, he is quite sound, Cardinal Turkson. Now I get into my second candidate, Cardinal Uliet. Mark Uliet is a Canadian cardinal, and He was born on 8th of June 1944. He's 77. His experiences that he's the head of the congregation of bishops. He is well known to the media, and he has lots of curial experience. Now, Cardinal Uliet, he's famous for his works, his theological arguments, and his theological ideas, and he's presented himself as this establishment moderate. Yes, I mean, to be fair, he is quite conservative when you look at his works. He he holds the position of the Trinity in Mass should sort of be it should be accepted, integrated within the Church. However, he's had multiple events where he's supported sort of the pastoral nature of Pope Francis. He's called upon the uplifting of poverty. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but he has the flair of Pope Francis. That's all I have to say about him, to be fair. Actually, no, there is one thing. I think the downfall for Cardinal Uliet, however, is that he could have a Pope Benedict moment. And that is because there was an investigation undertaken in 2020 concluded that Cardinal Uliet had failed while as rector of the Grand Seminary of Montreal, to take seriously and investigate reports of inappropriate behavior at the time involving minors and in sexual nature. Now, that will be his massive downfall, in my opinion, if Cardinal Uliet was actually considered within the conclave. That they don't want the church does not want a scandal anymore. They really do not want a scandal with the church. So they will likely see Cardinal Uliet and say, perhaps maybe we can let this slide. However, we cannot let this happen, so they might not choose Cardinal Uliet. The third cardinal mention is Cardinal Pietro Parolin. So Cardinal Pietro Parolin is our first Italian here, and he's the only Italian here. He is born on 17th of January 1955. He's 66 years old. He's currently the Cardinal Secretary of State. He is a member of the Council of the Cardinal Advisors. He's got lots of former diplomatic services, and he's also well known, such as Cardinal Uliet. Now, Cardinal Pietro Parolin is a career man. He's a career man cleric. He has risen the ranks. He's always been a seminarian. He went up the ranks of priest, bishop, and archbishop, cardinal, and he's always been a strong, loyal man to the establishment. I mean, it was evident even when I think a good example of this is when the SSPX was excommunicated in Montreal. He was like, okay, because he was a big enjoyer of the Tridentine Rite. Yet he he shut down. He tried to shut down all the SSPX chapels within Montreal due to the fact that he's an establishment man. He's a career man. He is very paperable. I mean, his bio of being the Cardinal Secretary of State represents that. However, I think that unlike unlike some things here, there's a trend. There's a massive point to note out. It's that Cardinal Secretaries of States rarely become the Pope. I mean, they rarely become the Pope. It's a trend. Secretary of State's Paperball, but then when it actually comes to it, they don't become Pope. Now, another factor within this is that his investments decisions make it difficult for the Cardinals to say sure, because he has invested during the time of the Cardinal Biecu scandal. He had direct connections to the house investments, which ultimately led to embezzlement and tax fraud. And now, take it as you will, whether you like tax fraud or not, that's not a good image for the Vatican. However, it is less serious to the cases of Cardinal Uliet, so I think Pietro Parolin, especially owing that he's Italian, I think he could follow the footsteps of Cardinal Pacelli, especially in a situation like this. Now, on to our fourth and somewhat infamous on the stream, Cardinal Tagle. Luis Antonio Gokim Tagle is from the Philippines, and he was born on the 21st of June 1957. He's 64. He's well known, obviously. I mean, he he's everywhere in the media, especially within the Asian Catholic media. Uh, he also runs the Alpha course. So that's a sort of, well, thing for Christians if they want to become a Christian. The Alpha course. He runs the Catholic version of that. So he has quite a lot of authority. He's the prefect of the congregation of the evangelization of the peoples, and he's the president of the Cartier Internationalist. So he's got experience, and I believe, especially with the promotion to the CDF, I think he I think he has that sort of readiness to him. Now he's currently living in Rome. He speaks Italian, of course, and there's no doubt that Pope Francis wants him to be prepared for office. He was created cardinal by Benedict, and he was promoted by Francis. And then the thing is, he's a Jesuit. And now I'm not making a Jesuit joke here because haha funny, but what's interesting is that as he was prepared for office by Ratzinger, and he was trained by the Jesuits for hard times in the Philippines, he he knows what's going to happen. He's sort of the key for the church for the Chinese hostilities because he's a Chinese Filipino man, Cardinal Tagle. And I believe that Cardinal Tagle, he's been set up to become the Pope. While I do believe there are other candidates ready for this who's been set up as well, that I'll mention in my second slide, the other slide. Cardinal Tagle is the strongest cardinal so far, the most strongest liberal cardinal to have been given these foot platforms by Pope Francis and to be promoted in these pastoral, nurturing ways, and especially as he's given that promotion to the CDF with Cardinal Supik. So only time will tell. And people say he might be too young, but I think especially with China rising up, we can see I can possibly see a situation where Cardinal Tagle might be like John Paul II, that the church will want a character who would defy the establishment anti-Westerners. And at the time, John Paul II, being Polish, he he was against the Soviet Union. Cardinal Tagle will be against the Chinese establishment. So I think it would be interesting to see him if he is Pope. It would be interesting. So now let me go into my second slide. Here are some Paperball contenders. Now, so I got these Paperball sources from Edward Penton. He was a Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register, and he released a book in August 2020 entitled "The Next Catholic Pope," and it was the leading cardinal candidates, listing 19 cardinals he considered Papabile for a future conclave after Pope Francis. Two of the 19, so Wilfred Napier and Angelo Scola, turned 80 in 2020 and thus will not be part of the future conclave. But hypothetically, they could still be elected the Pope, which is unlikely. Several others are due to reach the age of 80 in the next couple of years. But however, from the list, I've chosen the four cardinals who have the strongest running, which may not be accounted to my system I have. However, they're the inside opinions of the National Catholic Register and the Vaticanologist Edward Penton. So, so firstly, we have Cardinal Erdo. Second, we've got Cardinal Mueller. Third, we have Cardinal Robert Serra. And fourth, we've got Cardinal Zuppi. Now, firstly, we've got Cardinal Erdo. I think a main advantage to Cardinal Erdo is that he he's obviously European. He's Hungarian. He's only 69, so he's quite young. He's got experience. So he's the former president of the Council of the Bishop Conferences of Europe, former president of the Hungarian Episcopal Conference. He has the experience. I think what sets him apart, even though he doesn't have that much curial or diplomatic experience, is that he knows lots of languages. And actually, most cardinals don't know a lot of languages. They only know Italian, Latin, and their native languages. While Cardinal Erdo, he's fluent in Latin, English, French, Hungarian, Italian, German, and Spanish. I mean, the only downfall for him is he hasn't had that much experience, which I doubt Pope Francis will elevate him due to the fact that he's quite traditional. He he's been quite critical actually with Traditionis Custodes actually, where he said that the traditional Latin Mass should be fully liberalized to the extent of the priests to everyone. So Cardinal Erdo is sort of the outsider, sort of the compromise candidate, I believe so, which will be likely a compromise candidate of the Conservatives. Next, we have Cardinal Muller. So Gerard Ludwig Muller. He's German, and he was born on the 31st of December 1947. Now, he is the former head of the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith, so he's had massive cure experiences. However, what differs with Cardinal Muller is that he's viewed to be in conflict with Pope Francis, which is a massive no-no. Even if you disagree with the Pope pastorally, it is dangerous for the it's dangerous for a cardinal to be in direct conflict with Pope Francis because they will see this cardinal as a maverick. They don't the Curia and the conclave were not like a maverick cardinal. However, Cardinal Muller has the experience, he has the intellect, and he's got the essence of sort of a young I wouldn't call him a young Lefebvre. However, he has the essence of a Lefebvre owing to him being European and actually standing up against Pope Francis. I mean, he Cardinal Muller has been one of the most outspoken cardinals against Pope Francis, who is papable. So I think that's something to take in. Now, thirdly, we've got a fan favorite. I was arguing with someone actually in the comment sections here. What's his name? Some random lad. Yes, Trek rider Robert Serra. Now, Robert Serra. He Robert Serra. He's from Guinea. He was born in 15th of June 1945. He's 76. He's the former head of the Congregation of Divine Worship, strong proponent of the traditional Latin Mass, and he's got the reputation as a traditionalist, and he's quite well known within traditional and liberal circles. Now, I'm a fan of Robert Serra, of course. He's one of the most holiest men to have ever been a cardinal in the recent age. He he defied all orders in Guinea when he was at the time just an archbishop and said, "You shouldn't be killing your own people," to the dictator of Guinea. And he went up to his palace, had a rant, and he didn't get killed because that showed the piety of Robert Serra. He wanted to protect his own people. Now, while Roberts, I think one thing to note is that Robert Serra does have tension with Pope Francis. That's a given fact. While not as direct the odds as Cardinal Muller, we can see that due to him being, as he was given the voluntary retirement, he could have kept his role as the head of the Congregation of Divine Worship. However, Pope Francis said, no, you're going to be replaced. And guess who he chose as the replacement? He chose Cardinal Roche. I mean, well, now Cardinal Roche, but at the time, Bishop Roche. Bishop Roche is the cardinal who led the dubia, the second of response to Traditionis Custodes, which further restricted the traditional Latin Mass. So the Curia has ostracized them, and as they've seen him as too much of trad. However, he's a very holy man, and I believe if the Conservatives were to rally behind a cardinal, they would rally behind if Turkson doesn't work or if uh, Parolin is not papable, they would choose Cardinal Sarah. However, owing to his age, it would be a quick papacy as he's getting quite old, which is the downside effect to this. Now, finally, we've got someone who you may actually not know, Matteo Maria Zuppi, Cardinal Zuppi. He's Italian. He was born on the 11th of October 1955. He's 65 years old. He is quite relatively unknown. So, to simply put it, to you conservatives here who are mostly watching this, is that Zuppi is sort of he's the Father James Martin of cardinals. If you don't know who Father James Martin is, he's the LGBT priest who promotes absolute heresy. Because Cardinal Zuppi is famous for his secular bridge building campaigns to unite two polar opposites, and and Zuppi does that wholeheartedly. Zuppi is also a Pope Francis conman, so Cardinal Zuppi is directly a Francis man, as he is a good Francis man because he replicates the sorts of doctrines of Pope Francis. Thus, he would be a good doctrinal successor to Pope Francis, sort of like John the 23rd to Paul VI, good successors of liberalism. His experience within the Curia is minimal. However, with the direct support of Pope Francis to all of a sudden elevate him to the president of the Episcopal Conference of Italy since to May 2022, it's not hard to see the Vatican trying to integrate Zuppi, as there were two other conservative candidates for the Episcopal Conference of Italy, the presidency, yet the post was specifically chosen by Francis, and they chose Cardinal Zuppi. So, Cardinal Zuppi is sort of the European Tagle, or Tagle, whatever his name is. Uh, and in a way, also, Cardinal Zuppi is like Pope Francis, because Pope Francis, at the time when he was Archbishop of what was it, Buenos Aires, uh, Pope Pope Francis visited the SSPX seminary, and he spoke against, well, liberalism at the time when he was a cardinal. Now, I think Cardinal Zuppi is trying to replicate that because unlike the other liberal modernist cardinals like Cardinal Marx, Zuppi is trying to establish relationships with traditionalists, and he celebrated a pontifical mass according to the Latin rite. So he did the 1962 missal in the pontifical mass, and he celebrated it. And this was in line with uh, the Latin Mass Society of Italy. So that is he is. I'm not calling anything, but he is the Italian Pope Francis. I think what's also important to note is that he's quite he's quite pastoral within his works like Pope Francis once again. So he he works with Sant Egidio. It's a Catholic lay association devoted to ecumenism and to conflict resolutions. He participated uh, in several colleagues in the negotiations that helped stop the civil war in Mozambique in 1992, and he was made an honorary citizen of Mozambique because he holds the pastoral nature and to negotiate all that. So he he's a person to look out for, definitely. So I mean, Cardinal Zuppi, he was given all these rights during he was elevated to cardinalate during the Pachamama event, which we know was absolute failure. However, the Pachamama event overshadowed Cardinal Zuppi, which was a good which was a good thing for the liberals within the church. Let's actually respond to this. I do not believe Cardinal Tagle will at all has a set chance in the next papal elections. I believe the majority of the college cardinals don't want a second Francis. I actually said that Daria Mary. I said that earlier with my second point of what cardinals be looking into. So I mentioned how second point. So that would be back a bit. So publicity. I mentioned that in reaction to unpredictable events with the papacy, Pope Francis, so his stance on same-sex unions, stances on the Holy Trinity, and all that nonsense, it's reasonable to speculate that as Pope Francis is quite unknown with his nature before the election, and even after the nature, people can't determine his true doctrine. the cardinals will be interested in picking a proven and predictable cardinal and someone who's well known. I think the thing is with Cardinal Tagle is that the thing is with Cardinal Tagle is that he he's well known. He's been given the of the offices of the church by Benedict and Pope Francis, and he's already established himself of a name within the Curia and the whole worldwide church, especially within Asia. So it's whether we like it or not, the College of Cardinals, especially the 30% of the liberals, especially with the moderates, I doubt I doubt they will uh, they would want a character like Tagle, a younger sort of like John Paul II character, whether we like it or not. Um, I think, however, the conservatives within the faction of the church may want to have Tagle because they may see him as easily to control. And this is vice versa as well. I mean, this could be said with Cardinal Turkson as well. The liberals will see Cardinal Turkson as a easy, controllable uh, pope. Now, if I finish with Cardinal Zuppi, even though Cardinal Zuppi is relatively unknown, if elected, he will be a Francis type, Francis game player. Now I'll go into my personal choices for the papacy. Yeah. Okay. Firstly, I know this won't happen. I mean, this is going to be impossible. But on the left we have Archbishop Schneider. Well, Bishop Schneider, Bishop Astana. I Bishop Schneider is a pious man. He actually is one of the only clerics that I would fully trust to become the Pope. He, uh, as of course he grew up in the Soviet Union, he knows what he's doing. He used to be a diplomat, of course. Now he's been diving into the traditional realm of theology, and he's been sort of in the limelight for championing the sort of pre-Second Vatican Council liturgy and the theological demands. Now, he, I believe, in his whole diocese, even though he's an auxiliary bishop, he has barred in this whole diocese of Astana communion in the hand. There's only communion in the tongue in Astana, and if not, you'll face some penalty by Bishop Schneider. So I think relatively he would be a good choice, but that's not likely because we haven't had a non-cardinal pope for about 500 years. Now, actually, my personal choice for who I would want to see the next pope as is a curveball answer, actually, as it would be Cardinal Bassetti. Cardinal Bassetti is 80 years old, and actually, at the time before 2022, Cardinal Bassetti was a top four candidate. But however, due to the fact that he's 80 now, it's Turkson, Oliet, Parolin, and Tagle. He was meant to be the third choice, third papal candidate. Carlo Bassetti is Italian, of course. He is 80, and he was the head of the Italian Episcopal Conference, and he would be the inoffensive candidate to Italians. So he would represent the Italians. He would represent both the sort of niche, not the niche, sort of mainstream liberal side and the strong conservative side. He had the membership of the Vatican congregations. He was a strong proponent of the TLM, and he was friendly with Pope Francis. He was friends with Pope Francis. So this this showed us that Cardinal Bassetti was, in reality, he would have restored the Latin Mass. He would have looked at the old Second Vatican. He would have looked at the Second Vatican Council, and he would call for a synod on the actual documents and how to interpret them. Because with the current interpretations, they're absolute nonsense. So Cardinal Bassetti would have been my personal favorite candidate. Now, even though he's not papal per se, as he's 80, you can still be elected a pope, whether you're over 80 or 80. So whether the grace of the Holy Spirit calls upon Cardinal Bassetti to be elected, who knows? But I do believe Cardinal Bassetti would do great, great good for the conservative world of the Catholic Church. Now, I wanted to mention that lots of people, well, lots of Americans actually say, "Oh, Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke would be based. So cool." Now, my problem here with Leo Burke is that even ideally, his ideas of traditionalism would suppress okay, I've the Society of St. Pius X. Okay, let me drink my water. Apologies. I sound like absolute a spaz. The SSP, he would suppress the SSPX, Leo Burke, due to the fact that he is ICKSP, FSSP man. He he would see tradition as in communion with Rome only, and he has stated the SSPX, uh, the SSPX are in schism. So Leo Burke would not be my ideal candidate here, because the Society of Saint Pius X are the are one of the only Catholic only Catholic groups who are not sedevacantist, who recognize the full una cum of the Pope to have the old rite ordinations. And I'm not saying the new rite ordinations are invalid. However, if you can keep that sacred holy lineage, like the SSPX do, I think that would be a massive advantage for the church, and Leo Burke would not want that, and he would suppress the SSPX. So, yes, hydration is important. Yes. Uh, yes, so if I can come to my conclusion here, conclusion of final remarks. There's a famous saying: "He who expects to be pope does not come out; who only comes out as a cardinal." So, as we saw, Cardinal Siri in 1958, Cardinal Lacroix in 1963, Cardinal Benelli in 1978. The only recent example of sort of a papal pope was Benedict XVI in 2005. That was a recent exception. I mean, looking at the ways currently are, we could possibly get a compromise candidate, and we could possibly get an English pope. So we could get Cardinal Vincent Nichols, compromise candidate for the Liberals and Conservatives. However, I think one strong notion here is there's another saying I'm going to mention. Yes, I'm a man who relies on quotes and sayings. That here comes, here comes a fat pope, comes in a thin pope. So what it's implying is that once a conservative pope is in office, there'll be a liberal pope, then there'll be conservative one. It's sort of like a ping pong match. Oh, you get conservative liberal, and we know Pope Francis is theologically liberal. So we can come to the safe remark that we will probably get a conservative pope this time around. However, we can break the band, of course, and possibly get uh, a liberal pope like we had with Paul VI and John the 23rd. So yeah, that's all I'm saying. So it's a loop really. So that was my conclusion, and who I believe will be Pope will be either Cardinal Parolin if the moderates and the conservatives take over, if Cardinal I believe Cardinal Sarah if the conservatives do take over, and if the liberals do take over, if they sort of have a majority in the College of Cardinals, the conclave, I do believe Cardinal Tagle or Cardinal Zuppi will be elected as popes. And my personal choice will be uh, Cardinal Bassetti, of course, but I doubt he'll be elected. So those are my final remarks. Is I hope you've enjoyed the live stream. I'm sure the live stream's been pretty active, the comment section, so that's lovely. Are there any questions? Actually, I do owe a Q&A, mini Q&A here. So yeah, so actually no, so Josh, so you missed the fact there's John Paul the First. So John Paul the First, you've had John Paul the First was the conservative, and then, well, in a way, he was a moderate, really. John Paul II would have been liberal, Benedict would have been the conservative, Francis would have been the liberal, and next we would have the conservative. So you've got that wrong, mate. are there uh, are there any questions from the five members watching? So what's a pope? I'm not going to answer that. I'm sure you've been watching the video. So I will just wait for another minute for if there's any questions coming around the comment section. If there are not any, I can end the stream and hope hope for a good night for me. Do you think the world is ready for Canadian Pope? I mean, we've had an Argentinian Pope, we've had a Polish Pope. I mean, no harm in a Canadian Pope. How do I get in the world of you? I wouldn't say per se this is theology. I would just say this is more analysis of the Vatican and the actual institution of the church itself rather than theology. But how I got into the world of theology, I got into the world of theology uh, because I've always been a conservative person, a traditionalist, but as a secular traditionalist when I was young. I was always interested in politics when I was 9, and I came to the realization about 14, 13ish that um, you need to have, in order to be a traditionalist, you need to have assimilationist ideas. And in order to have British assimilation, you need to have the idea of Christianity. Now, there are many branches of Christianity. However, I read Cardinal Newman when I was, I believe, 15, 14ish, and I did believe that the Roman Catholic Church was the true church to believe in, and no matter if you're a strong ardent British nationalist, or whatever you want to call it, choosing the right theology and the right salvation is best. Uh, so I hope that answers your question. Why did the Pope cross the road? Okay, you tell me, George. Why did the Pope cross the road? Well, actually, to be fair, I guess it's more natural. I mean, once you understand your church and you understand your clerics and understand actually who's leading the congregation, the laity, who's leading the future of our religion, I think it's self-explanatory that you learn it. It's natural. I mean, like if I could name all the all the bishops within England and Wales, because that's how much I've been looking into it and looking at the successes behind the old rites and all that. So he's Cardinal Turkson. Well, I'm not campaigning for a cardinal per se, but I'm just merely saying the best papal candidate is um, the best papal candidate is Cardinal Turkson. I don't know. So wait, was it a joke, or so why did the Pope cross the road? Why did the chicken cross the road? Or are you trying to say, in a hypothetical sense, why did the Pope become liberal? Is that what we're trying to say? If that's the if that's the case of why the why the Pope became liberal, I think it's merely down to the humanic continuity of the Second Vatican Council. it's it's merely it's merely because of that. That's it. No, no, you did not, George. No. Also, Cardinal Turkson is conservative, right? Yeah, no, Cardinal Turkson with Cardinal Sarah and with other cardinals actually. Most of the cardinals within Africa are the conservative ones. I think we ought to thank Marcel Lefebvre for this. His missionary works within French-speaking Africa spread across the whole of Africa to missionaries. So Yeah, that I believe that yeah, most of the African clergy are traditionalist. I think that, oh, dear me. uh, I think the Vatican is ready for this. However, are the cardinals ready for this? I think what the cardinals we take into consideration is the whole Catholic population ready for this? And I and I would be happy with a Pope Sarah or Pope Turkson. Yeah, I think some people would not feel the sort of orthodoxy behind an African Pope. They would see it as unorthodox and not good, which is which I find frankly disgusting. But it's I think it's up to people's opinions. What would be the papal? Okay, so if you look at the full, I think Cardinal Turkson would go with Benedict. Uh, Tagle would go with John Paul III. uh, uh, Uleta would probably go with. I think he would probably go with Paul VII. Pedro Parolin, Cardinal Parolin would probably choose Pope Pius XIII. So for yeah, this is wide brand wide for the next one. So I wouldn't get into it. So yeah, no, I think back to George's question, the the reason why the Vatican, well, the Pope has become liberal, is due to the fact that Second Vatican Council and his interpretations have directly misled the clergy, and due to the fact that we've had the sexual revolution, so we've had this sort of understanding and opening reforming of our pastoral arms, and that's one of the key reasons against it all, against the tradition. No Johns. Uh, I'm considering the fact the last John was John the 23rd. I don't think possibly we would see Zupi might choose Pope John the 24th. So and what's my papal name? I wouldn't elevate myself even to a priest. I'm not worthy enough to be a priest. However, however, I do believe that if I was to choose a cool papal name, I would choose probably Urban or Pious. So I believe I'll wrap it off. Okay, actually, I'll answer this one more. Could we get a conservative revolutionary pope to radically bring back tradition? I would say no, we would not have that, considering the fact that the only the only clerics that I know of that hold the position of recognize and resist, so the SSPX position, is that of Archbishop Vigano and Bishop Bishop Schneider. All the conservatives mentioned here, Odo, Muller, Sarah, Turkson, and sort of bit Paradin Olete, they have they have only stated that they've recognized the Second Vatican Council, where they recognize it in its fullest, and there's nothing wrong with the Second Vatican Council. Yet, yet they won't do nothing about it in its fullest. Basinetti said something. He said that he would probably reform the interpretations, but I don't think that's enough. The the SSPX also with the election of Benedict XVI did state that all of its confinements within the church. Yes, we've got one who's done some more in Pontificum liberated the Latin Mass. Yet that isn't that has not done enough because Benedict has consistently defended its liberality of the Second Vatican Council. So I think I think that is a dangerous thing. I wouldn't even call it liberalism at this point. It's sort of the modernism. We have too much modernity within the church. So it's and to think that the Catholic Church is meant to be a reactionary institution. It's absolutely it breaks my heart to be fair. Really breaks my heart. So I think that was the last question. Probably the last question I'm going to answer unless if there's any questions. Uh, if there are any questions, you could message me in Discord. I've got a new Discord, so I'll probably add that on the comments. I'll pin that in the comment sections later tonight. Uh, hope you enjoyed the live stream. God bless everyone. I hope you have a great day if you're in Australia. So God bless. God bless everyone.